how you can incorporate seasonality into the forecasting.
Instead of just saying that we're going to, restock when we get to a certain point.
What are the drawbacks of using a spreadsheet?
So it might make sense to do that discount if you've got a lot of excess inventory.
Could you just give some details about the seasonality forecast?
So that's where your supply chain starts to stretch out.
How can sellers avoid those issues?
Ecom Squeezed podcast.
Welcome to Ecom Squeezed. I am your host, Sebastian, founder of Retail-Outsource, and today we have a very special guest with us, Chelsea Cohen, co-founder of SoStocked. It's now been sold to Carbon 6 in 2022. And Chelsea has spent years on managing Amazon inventory and helping other sellers turn inventory nightmares into profitability dreams. With a strong background in finance and an eye for operational efficiency, Chelsea is here to share her knowledge on tackling one of the e-commerce biggest challenges, inventory management. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Great. Could you just give us a short background, please?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been in e-commerce for 10 years now, and started selling in 2014. 2018 had issues with running out of stock, seeing how my profit was affected, my revenue. I also had a bunch of overstock, and it was the biggest problem that I had. So looked for a solution and couldn't really find anything. It was taking a lot of time to keep up with it. Asked people in the masterminds, what are you using? And they basically said, we've tried everything, nothing works right. We're going back to spreadsheets. So my thought as, an entrepreneur was, if a spreadsheet can do it, a software should be able to do it better. What is missing here? And so I saw that opportunity and worked with a bunch of other sellers to come up with a solution. That was end of 2019. We did our larger launch after that point. And then, of course, 2020 happened, and, we had to be there to help explain to people and run, organize with restock limits, with all the things that were going on in 2020. We're able to help a lot of people with keeping their heads above water.
Well, that's great. I had a look into your software as well, SoStocked. It have a lot of options, so that's fantastic. And I want to ask you a question about the seller's point of view. One of the main nightmares of sellers in running out of stock, right? So how can a seller effectively forecast the stocks? Like we have within Amazon inventory forecasting, and how accurate is that?
Yeah. So in terms of forecasting, the data should be analyzed. We get data from Amazon. The problem with using that raw data is that you could have stockouts, you could have sales spikes. So the first thing that we do is what we call adjusted velocity, which is removing those outliers. If there was a stock out, we want to take that out of the forecasting. If you've got a 60-day average and you were stocked out for 6 of those days, the average is going to be thrown off unless that is removed from the calculation. If you have a 60-day average that you're looking at and Prime Day was in the middle of it, you're going to overorder. So those things have to be addressed. And when you download a report from Seller Central, that data isn't filtered. So we tap into the API, are able to remove that, and then that gives you kind of the foundation. You can also do that with the same thing with last year's sales. And so that gives you the foundation, which, that's the velocity is the foundation for everything. And then on top of that, you build in your marketing plans, your seasonality, and those sorts of things. So it really does start with that velocity. And then you have to go one further and make sure that your marketing plans are factored into your inventory plans.
That's great. And regarding seasonality, how you can incorporate seasonality into the forecasting?
Sure. So the API gives you 2 years worth of data. You're able to pull, we look at the last year's data and what were the sales for every single one of those days to create a trend, right? A pattern rather. You have this pattern of sales. Maybe it's a Christmas product, maybe it's a back to school. And so we'll be able to take that pattern and replicate it into the coming year. And then once that's replicated, it's 1 for 1. If you sold 10 units, we're going to give you 10 units. And then that can be built upon. If you've got additional growth from last year to this year, you can decide to add to it. You can decide for a season, for example, you think that Christmas season, you're going to perform 20% better from Black Friday to Christmas. That can be layered on top of that.
Great. And what are the best practices for balancing inventory level to avoid going out of stock?
Yeah. So we actually have and recommend something that we call min-max restocking. And that is, instead of just saying that we're going to, restock when we get to a certain point, it picks what is the lowest, what is the some people call it buffer stock, some people call it safety stock. What is the lowest you ever want to go? We recommend 35 days. We used to recommend 30 days, but then Amazon introduced their low inventory fees. So running too lean, you can end up incurring those inventory fees, which are low inventory is fulfillment fees that you pay if you don't have enough stock spread across the country. Because Amazon is express shipping that. So they want you to pay a portion of your fulfillment fee to pay for that express shipping. So that was introduced last year, and that's not changing. So that is why we say 35 days is a good minimum, and then 90 days is a good maximum. Depending on supply chain, some people go to 75 days. If you have a longer supply chain, then 90 days is a good kind of safety. But doing much above that, you can get into a situation where you're paying extra fees on storage, which we call avoidable storage fees. If you're paying more than 90 days, you're incurring more monthly fees, and then you can get to the point where you're incurring what's called aged inventory fees at the 6-month mark.
That's great. And for using inventory management, a lot of sellers use a spreadsheet, right? In your opinion, what are the drawbacks of using a spreadsheet?
There's a lot of room for human error. There are the data that you get from Seller Central, like I mentioned, isn't audited, adjusted data. It's the pure data from Amazon. The difficulty with that is that you could skew your forecasting too high, you could skew it too low. And if you're using Amazon's recommendations as part of that, Amazon's recommendations, we've seen their algorithm not to be very accurate. We saw that when they launched restock limits in 2020 and 2021, they have capacity limitations now. And so when a person looks at their data and takes Amazon data, they're taking that faulty data from Amazon in terms of their recommendations. It's hard to trust the accuracy of that.
The other question I have is regarding Amazon's IPI score. In your opinion, how can a seller improve IPI score, and what are the factors that affect IPI score?
Yeah, so IPI score, it looks at stranded inventory, in-stock rate, excess inventory, and then inventory sell-through. How fast are you selling your inventory? The biggest factor is that sell-through. If you just focus on sell-through, basically you focus on being able to send smaller orders more frequently. Amazon doesn't want you to send 4 months worth of inventory. So that sell-through rate will be positively affected if you send more inventory more often. And so that's the sell-through rate. That also will help with the excess inventory. Because if you're sending less stock, you have less likelihood for that excess inventory metric. So kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone when you focus on the sell-through.
Yeah, that's great. And I have a follow-up question on the excess inventory. So if you know that your stock is not moving, what are the measures we can take to reduce it?
Yeah, exactly. The best thing to do is just, marketing, lowering the price, seeing if that helps to move the inventory. And if you have additional marketing channels, if you're running, working with different influencers, just generally doing sales, lightning deal, or maybe you have an email list and you can promote 20% off sale to your email list. If you know you're incurring a lot of aged inventory fees, it might make sense to do a significant discount, 40% discount, 50% discount. If it's costing you, let's say $5.45 per cubic foot is what you're being charged at 9 months. So it might make sense to do that discount if you've got a lot of excess inventory. And then another thing that we've been working with one of the other teams in Carbon 6, one of the other tools is DSP, demand side platform. So Amazon allows you to promote to other other websites and other areas that they're currently promoting outside of Amazon. The reason that this tends to work better than PPC is more expensive. So with DSP being less expensive, being able to potentially use that strategy to move through that inventory if you're having a hard time moving through it in another way.
Regarding the storage limits, right, during peak season like Q4.
Yeah.
So let's assume that you are a seller that you're already kind of full, your storage is full, and you're expecting like you are planning to do a lot of influencer marketing in the Q4. And you don't have storage limit. You're kind of full on storage side. So how will you tackle this situation?
Yeah. So I kind of say this with a big caveat, but a lot of people are moving into Amazon warehousing and distribution. The reason that I'm kind of want to caution is a lot of people moved everything over to AWD, and now they're facing a lot of check-in time problems and that sort of thing. So I would never say move everything over there, but it's good to have, if Amazon has shut you out from selling from your storage fees, there are those two options. There's Amazon warehousing and distribution. They will accept inventory and they'll drip it in. So even if you're not able to hold your inventory at Amazon FBA, you're able to hold it and it helps you to get around those capacity limits. The other thing that can be done is Amazon lets you bid for additional space. So you're able to say, I'm willing to pay X number of dollars per cubic foot and request more space. Then you have this bid that you say, I'm reserving this in this space. This is how much I'm willing to pay. As you sell through that inventory, you will get performance credits. So you may end up paying nothing. You're kind of gambling on your prediction that you're going to sell through that inventory. Because if you sell through, Amazon doesn't charge you. But if you don't, then they're going to charge you that fee, and then you'll pay storage fees on top of that.
Great. Thank you. And regarding return goods, is there something that you manage on SoStocked software?
So with returns, we don't really have a feature to track returns. We do have visibility on if there are pending removals. So we pull that metric so you can see if there are removals that are pending. We don't have anything that manages that side of things particularly. We have added something that will give you options for looking at product, and if it needs to be removed, what is that going to cost you, and that sort of thing. So we'll give you different options for how much it's going to cost for the removals. You need to liquidate excess stock. What is that going to cost?
And on your website, SoStocked, you have a lot of functions, right? One of them being like a seasonality forecast. Could you just give some details about the seasonality forecast?
Yeah. So if you have particular products that are seasonal, we like to categorize products, break them into different types. So you might have seasonal products, non-seasonal products, and you can assign a tag to specific products and in bulk make settings for that product. We like to call them rules. So you create these rules, and in terms of seasonality forecast, it would be taking the past sales and then potentially building on top of that those additional trends or additional spikes. We even have a negative spike. So if you have a product that sells really heavily in the up period, but then needs to be adjusted, you can actually adjust down to compensate for what is that normal range that you sell outside of that heavy season.
Great. And you also have this inventory command center. I says monitor inventory health and vital KPIs, alerts and widgets. So I can see a lot of means I can ask individual tools, what's special about it. But these are some of them which stands out. So if you can give us a little bit details on inventory command center. Looks like something fancy. With a lot of dashboards.
So it gives you your key metrics. So are there any products at risk of stocking out? What orders and transfers need to be placed? Any projected storage fees? We also pull data for low inventory, products that are incurring fees, products that are getting close to incurring fees. And so that helps to be proactive in having everything in one place, being able to identify at a glance what those things are that need to be addressed.
Great, great. And regarding SoStocked, which all marketplace do you support? Do you support like European market especially?
Yeah, so we're an Amazon software, and so we'll cover all of the marketplaces for Amazon.
And regarding integration, I want to ask you, can you integrate with eBay, Etsy, or Shopify, any other platforms?
So we don't have integrations right now. There are ways of taking the sales data and building a forecast with that exported sales data. It's definitely something that we are planning to do in the future, but we don't have that set up right now.
So at the moment you have to download as a CSV, upload as a CSV.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And regarding the shipping side, what all integrations you have? Like, if you want to use MCF, for example, do you offer any functionalities for that?
So we pull in everything from Amazon. So if there's MCF sales, we can get that sales data and we can build it into the reordering process. So we can factor that. We're working on factoring in Amazon warehousing and distribution, pulling from that API as well.
Great. And the other question I have is that, is there any system that in SoStocked that it will monitor the stock and we can put a custom stock level? That means it will trigger an email or some kind of alert. And if you can put the supplier details email, then you can send an automated email to the supplier saying, okay, we need to reorder this stock, for example. Do you have any functionalities like that?
So in terms of emails, when you have to reorder or transfer, you'll get an alert. You can set up the cadence of that. So if you want to do weekly on a certain day, if you want to get daily alerts, all of that can be programmed in. And then we don't automatically push reorder requests just because there's a lot of money on the line. So we want to make sure that there's an actual human pushing a button, making sure that they want to spend, $20,000 on inventory. So we don't do an automatic push, but once the PO has gone through and been approved by someone, it's a couple clicks of the button to be able to email that particular order to your supplier. So that can be all programmed in to have a direct link inside of the software to send the email to your supplier.
Great. And regarding, this is kind of a thing going on Amazon space, like does inventory level affect the ranking, sales ranking?
Yeah. So there's something called geo ranking, and it's been around for a while. I think that low inventory fees and some struggle within the supply chain over the past couple of years has really gotten it into the awareness of sellers more. But basically, everything revolves around the delivery time, right? It used to be 2-day delivery guarantee, and now, that is the guarantee, but next day and same day are becoming huge targets for delivery for Amazon. So Amazon has this promise and they have this commitment to make. When you have inventory, they want it spread out across the country so that if someone in New Jersey orders, they get that 2-day, as well as someone in Wisconsin. If you don't have enough inventory, let's say you have a ton in California and New York, someone in the middle of the country orders, they have to meet that 2-day promise. So they're going to have to send something from California within 2 days, and they send it rush. They send an express order. So Amazon does two things. One, which we mentioned, they charge you low inventory level fee to pay for that express shipping. And then they'll also, in that specific area, lower you in the ranking and stop showing your ads as often in that area. You may be looking at ranking data inside of California and not notice that, but you might be sliding down the ranking in these other areas. So that's important to know. And that's something that you can actually check on if you change on Amazon.com on the buyer side, if you change the zip code to a zip code in that area where you think that you're short on inventory, then you will be able to see for specific keywords, what is your ranking for that.
And to monitor it, as you mentioned, you just enter the zip code and it will show you the ranking, right? Is there any software that you can recommend to keep?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that there are some softwares that do pull data for, geographically, where is your inventory sitting. I can't say I know of any specific one off the top of my head, but I have heard that there are softwares like that. You can also pull data from Seller Central geographically on where your inventory is, what fulfillment center fits in.
Great. And the other question I have is, how can you coordinate this with the suppliers? I asked you this question regarding, automated ordering, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, I assume you've been in China and a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to make it smoother, what are the tips that you recommend to make it easier on the ordering side?
Having a good lead time, having a lead time that fits with what your supplier is able to deliver. It's always a good idea if it takes between 30 and 45 days to err on the side of longer, because if your inventory arrives sooner, that's great. If it arrives later, then that could, make you stock out. So speaking with your supplier, making sure that they can meet their commitments. And then we've got an order tracker. It's a good idea to reach out to your supplier, let's say a week before it's supposed to be ready, and make sure everything's still on track. Let them know, hey, the date's coming up. Are we still going to hit that date? Adjust accordingly if you're not. And then at that time, get them coordinated, get your quotes from your freight forwarder, get them coordinated together. So sometimes what happens is the product is ready and then you start that process. And then it takes, a few days for the freight forwarder to work that out with the supplier. And then the boat has a specific schedule. So if you haven't done that work, it could be, everything's ready to ship on the 30th, but then it takes through the 4th to get everything coordinated. And then the boat has already left and then things don't go out till the 7th. So that's where your supply chain starts to stretch out and be longer than expected, is not having that coordination beforehand and just trying to get it arranged after the fact.
Great. And I'm not sure if I want to ask you this question regarding product labeling and stuff like that for FBA products. If you don't have the correct labeling, there might be delays in check-ins, right?
Right.
So you should have seen a lot of issues like that. How can sellers avoid those issues?
Making sure that you have accurate data going into the software or into the shipments inside of FBA. We have flat files. So flat files can be more accurate once you have the data inside of your PO. You can export a flat file. Make sure the data that's going in is accurate, and then work with your 3PL or your prep center to understand their processes, how they like to receive those. Really, if you're having those problems, you need to address it right away with whoever's handling that labeling process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. And regarding, I've seen a lot of, Excel spreadsheet calculator on your website, SoStocked. Could you just pick some and give some details in some of the software? Excel
Some
space.
of the free tools. Yeah. So SoStocked.com/tools is where you'll find a bunch of our free tools. The two most popular are around resizing your products or reorganizing your cartons. It's focused on profitability. So we do, as part of a profit audit, an inventory profit audit, and part of this tool is you're able to look at what is the product size, how much are your fulfillment fees, and then after you've determined your fulfillment fees, we look at how do you get into the next lower tier. Are there opportunities to reduce your product size, your weight, your size, to get into that lower tier? Has Amazon bumped you into a higher tier, unnecessarily? We've seen times where the weight for the overage is 0.01 pounds. So Amazon's charging you in excess by 0.01 pounds. So in that case, you can take that information and you can go into Seller Central and search in the search bar, remeasure, and then you'll get a pop-up. You can say, remeasure this ASIN. And if they can remeasure and see if you're in a lower tier, then moving forward, you'll save on that fulfillment fee. And actually, you can request for paying back the overage of fees for the last 90 days. So that's something that one of the tools that Carbon 6 has is called Seller Investigators. And that's one of the things that they work on, is the opportunities to reclaim the overages that Amazon's charged you on fulfillment.
Whatever options or tools we can see on SoStocked, it's still available on Carbon 6, right? All the tools.
All the tools, yeah. So if you go to carbon6.io, you'll see all the different tools. So I mentioned Seller Investigators, of course, SoStocked, the DSP Prime tool, which we talked about earlier, are there. And then there's other tools available, including a free tool to see what your key metrics are called Manage by Stats.
Great. Regarding this, the point that you mentioned about resizing and checking the measurements, I think a lot of sellers forget this checking. Sometimes there might be like a few millimeters or reducing to get a better price. Thank you for that. And you have another tool called Amazon HTML Converter. I'm just curious about those tools. What is that?
Yeah, so that's not a tool that's necessarily related to inventory, which you kind of get a little bit. This one is not like the others, but we built that years ago. Actually, we ended up being able to serve a segment of people. Amazon changed the rules around HTML at that time. Before SoStocked, I taught and spoke a lot about copywriting for Amazon. So I actually had a small agency helping people with their listings. And so when Amazon changed over the rules for HTML and what you're able to do, removing emojis, specifically formatting it, a person could take their data, plug it into the HTML converter, and then it would give you Amazon compliant HTML that you could upload.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. We've gotten a lot of traffic on that. It's still used. Even non-Amazon sellers kind of come and use that tool.
Great. I'll put a link on the show notes with all these tools. I highly recommend to check those tools. It's fantastic. And for the viewers, do you want to offer anything like a discount coupon or any free audit or anything like that?
Yeah. So we have a free audit that we do. It's under, let me see if I can get the link. If not, we can put it in the show notes. So what it basically is, we'll look at your product. Okay, we'll have to link it in the show notes. I would say, might be even just to reach out to me personally. We'll put it into the show notes. But what we look at is once you plug in, we can pull your data, find out what stockouts have happened in your business. How much did those stockouts cost you? We look over the last year, and then we look at, do you have any low inventory? Do you have any fees that you're incurring? Are there storage fees? Are you paying aged inventory fees? What would you be paying over the next 8 to 12 months if you didn't change anything? You can see what ASINs are costing you the most money. And then we'll run your entire catalog for that resizing. For the fulfillment fee reduction that we talked about, we'll run the entire catalog. So it doesn't matter if you have, 300 products, we'll be able to run the entire catalog at once.
So you just have to plug the Seller Central account, and it will, how long it will take to get that report?
So we can get a report once it's plugged in, I would say within 48 hours, because we have to pull the data in, and then we'll make sure, kind of look over and make sure the numbers all make sense. And then we can jump on a call and discuss it with you.
That's great. I will put all the details in the show note. Perfect. And I will put a link to Chelsea's LinkedIn profile as well. So if you want to contact her,
I actually did remember, I think the easiest way right now, SoStocked.com/connect would be a good one, because you can reach out to me. My LinkedIn should be there. So if you want a profit audit, that's actually probably the best place to go to reach out.
That's great. Again, thanks a lot, Chelsea, for your time. Really appreciate that.
Of course.
All the knowledge that you have shared.
Of course.